Hello, everyone. I'm Mandara Cromwell, and I'm here at the home of Cyma Technologies, where we marry the science and spirit through cymatics and advanced sound technology to benefit the total health of body, mind, and spirit. And my special guest today is Betty McKeon, who brings a wealth of experience and knowledge on sacred sound and vibration and the cycles of the celestial bodies. Betty has a fascinating background spanning 4 decades, including areas of real estate, astrology, Reiki, and at the core, a daily practice using sound, music, and meditation. So, welcome, Betty.
Thank you very much. Thank you for asking me to do this. I appreciate it. And it's good to see you again.
Thank you. Yes, Betty and I have known each other before. I have called upon her in the past for her her expertise in very special areas that we're going to dive into today. Because I think, Betty, there are many people with our devices, the Cyma Technologies acoustic meridian intelligence devices,
Right.
that recognize at some point in their healing process that they have certain patterns that maybe have been going on for a long time. Sometimes they're unconscious of these patterns, and then one day they become conscious of them. There's a tap on the shoulder, there's a, as they say, the divine spirit gets our attention
Right.
with a feather, a hammer, or a Mack truck.
Right. All of those.
All of those. So why don't we start by you telling us a little bit about your path and how you've recognized these within your own life?
Well, I think to begin with, when I was a little girl, I came from an atheistic family. Both my parents were atheists. So I never even heard the word God or Jesus or anything. And I was 6 years old, and my cousin who lived down the street had gone to Sunday school. And I was a little surprised because I didn't know what Sunday school was. And when she got home, I asked her what kind of school it was because I loved learning. And she said, it's a place where you go to study about Jesus. This was my first introduction to anything spiritual. And she said, if you're right-handed, you come from Jesus, and if you're left-handed, you come from the devil. Well, I knew what the devil was from Halloween. And so I went back home and I asked my mother, and she said, well, she said, I don't believe there's anything. I think when you're dead, you're dead. And it just was horrifying to me. And I said, well, I believe like Kay, my cousin. And that night, I started praying out loud. I didn't know how to pray. And I started praying out loud. And my sister yelled down that she goes, Betty is talking to somebody that's not here, Mom. And then I was quite embarrassed. So I kept it all inside from that day on. And then when I was about 10, I went to church with my uncle. And when I walked in the church, I felt like crying. And I didn't understand. But and then I started going to the Catholic Church by myself before any of my friends, so that they didn't know I didn't know what I was doing, and I envied them for going to catechism, and I couldn't go because I wasn't officially a Catholic. And so that was the beginning of my spiritual journey. But the real crux happened when in 1966, when my husband died in a car accident, and I had no real strong background. And from that, I started reading Edgar Casey. There is a river, and I thought, oh, I like this reincarnation stuff. And it made more sense to me than anything that I had ever studied. And so then my life took a change when I moved to Atlanta, and I got married again and had 2 children, and one was disabled, and so that was challenging. And then by 1979, I divorced, I was in real estate, and I got exposed to Qi and Reiki at that point. And my whole life started changing. And then by 1980, I uh, I was introduced to my spiritual practice that I do now, and Swami Muktananda, and from that point on, everything changed. I was exposed to worlds that I didn't know about, including sound therapy, and it was just fabulous for me.
So let
So
me ask you, since you had some pretty significant events in your childhood and young adult life, and then you came upon astrology, were you able to look at those patterns and apply them to your own life and say, oh, wow, this is some
oh,
relationship to the stars or to the planetary effects of what's happening here on Earth?
well, what was interesting is when I got into real estate, my broker she did astrology as a hobby and asked if she could do a reading for me. And I said, oh, sure. I didn't really know what it was. And she knew things about me that I knew, only I knew. And it kind of freaked me out. But at the same time, it intrigued me. And from that point on, for as long as I sold real estate, I would question her daily. And then from that, I went into, I studied with two really good astrologers. And in my marriage, we had gone into therapy. And I stopped therapy at one point because the astrology was really revealing more about me and showing me the patterns that I was born with more than the therapy was helping me. And that's when I really, really got into astrology from that point on. And I saw it was really simultaneous with my spiritual path and my spiritual journey. And the Reiki came later, but this was really, it was so apparent to me that this was to be used for spiritual growth and not for winning at the horses or finding the cycles to bet on the horses. And that it had a much deeper meaning for me, almost instantly. And so that's how that began. And you're right, with astrology, you can definitely see patterns. And I think those patterns are everywhere anyway, but I think when we're born, when we take that first breath, it starts a rhythm in our being, and it's our own individual rhythm. And recently I've had the thought, when people have open heart surgery, and I have no proof of this to begin with, but when people have open heart surgery and they stop the heart, or someone has a heart attack and stops the heart, you cannot get back that rhythm when it's restarted. It's different, and it's not the same anymore. And it's almost really, to me, it's almost like those being born again, because the rhythm is different. And interestingly, this is the one thing when I started doing tambura and my CDs with meditation, was that the one thing even people with Alzheimer's never lose is rhythm. And I thought that was amazing, that to the core of our being is rhythm.
Fascinating.
Isn't that fascinating? I love it.
It really is. And, thank you for sharing your observances of people who go through, the heart portal, so to speak, in the way of heart attack and heart transplant. And I think
Completely.
there's a similar thing with other organ transplants as well, kidney, liver.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, this really fascinating to look at that. And so, have you ever looked at the astrological chart of someone who's had an organ transplant?
I
Uh,
have not, but that would be a great study to do. But I have noticed, and I've spoken with some people, especially at my age, there's a lot of people that I know now who have had surgeries on their heart, particularly. But you're right, because there is a different frequency for every organ. And so that would make a difference. I hadn't thought about that, but that's very true. And each one of them, when they came back, had a depression. And I really started thinking about that. And I thought, of course they have a depression. Why wouldn't they? They're not themselves anymore. They're not what they're accustomed to. The frequency is different.
Don't recognize that. And in my work using therapeutic sound devices, and we track people and observe their patterns. When there is a shift that is too quickly, they
Right.
seem to have this depression because and the depression seems to come a little bit as a result of them losing control, or they feel like they've been plopped out of one city and scenario smack dab on the other side of the world with totally new communication and customs and things like that. So it's a slight
Right.
depression of that.
In astrology, Uranus would fit the bill for that. It's sudden and unexpected things. But what I find is that for about 2 years, the people have been contemplating things 2 years before the actual event. But it's the event itself is shocking in how they fulfill what they've been contemplating and wanting to happen. And it is a jolt. It's in astrology, it rules earthquakes, which unfortunately we just had in Morocco. And you can see those patterns when there is some big world event like that, that does show up in the day and the location of where the event has taken place.
Interesting. Tell me about the celestial bodies and their patterns. Is this pattern observed? Do astrologers observe this from the patterns of all of the planets and their play, or just the relationship to the Earth? Because we are here on the Earth, and so an earthquake, we would go, what happened here?
When I have observed and done some studying, just like, for example, an earthquake, there is, in astrology, it's, if you can think of a clock, and the clock has minute hand, hourly hand, and also it has the major hand. So there's like 3 different things in the works at this point. And you see the degrees of where the celestial planets are. And the moon in astrology is the timer. It's the one that sets the alarm off, so to speak. So just as an example, let's say Uranus is out there and the sun gets into an aspect of activating that particular energy, and then the moon comes and joins it. That's when you see events happening. So a lot of the times people will say to me, oh, they think I'm a psychic. I'm not a psychic, but I do read the patterns very well of when things are going to occur. I try very hard not to get down to the very minute and details, because I don't want to live people's lives for them. But I do give them, here's a block of time that to watch what happens. Because if they become the observer, they can watch the patterns more closely, almost without a lot of emotion tied to it. And for me, if they can make better decisions that way, then I've done my job. And also to appreciate, I think this is the biggest thing that with astrology, is that they appreciate who they are. And I always tell people, stop taking credit for who you are and be appreciative of who you are. And I think that's the biggest thing. Recently, since COVID, I've been teaching, and I used to teach, but I let that go for a long time. And I've started back teaching classes online. And one of the things that I have really pressed upon my students is that each one of the signs, each one of the planets has a virtue to it. And so people tend to concentrate more on the negativity which everything has a lower expression of something, but to really start focusing on the virtues that they already possess. They just haven't recognized it. And I think you're right. It's the recognizing of the patterns and the appreciation that they have, because everyone has an incredible talents. Everyone is incredibly unique. And I think that's why I've done this for so many years. I've been doing this for over 43 years, and I'm still in awe of it.
That's
It's
fantastic.
amazing.
Tell me about, I'm sure you can give me an example or two, or share with our audience, someone who has come with a illness,
Right.
illness, and can you share a little bit how they became aware of their pattern and their choices along the way, and how it related to their expression of a illness?
It's one of the things that I'm really into is etymology, because I feel like the intent of a word has never really changed, and we use it in different contexts. Just as an example, and I always use this as the example, the word sophisticate. The etymology of it means the act of being unnatural. Now, that's not how we use it. We use it as, someone who is very sophisticated, elegant, but it's still unnatural. So that word never leaves. The word cancer means hidden resentment, just as an example. And in astrology, everyone has every single sign in their natal chart that they were born with. And so where we have that Cancer energy is where we have hidden anger. And it's being able to recognize these different patterns. We all have similarities, but they are more specifically interacting in each person's individual life. Just as an example, in my own life, I have it on the area of partnerships. And I didn't do very well with partnerships in my life. And I did suppress a lot of patterns, and there was hidden resentment. But it was many years later that I realized that was there. And so people that have illnesses, if it's something that they developed and they weren't born with, I find that people that were born with disabilities have very strong patterns of not asking for help. Like they've been the captain of their own ship, if you look at it, and they have a lot of determination, incredible determination, but that can also be stubbornness. And so there's a rigidity a lot of the times, and it's almost like they're forced to ask for help in this lifetime. And so those kinds of patterns I see. But with someone that has developed an illness, as an example, usually there is a very specific aspect that is about it's about sadness, is what I find. There's a sadness or a suppression of something. It shows up in astrology as a Saturn Neptune aspect together. That's a difficult one. There's some that's nice, but Neptune represents our hidden thoughts, the thoughts we don't share with other people. That's a very simplistic way, but it also is illusions and things that aren't quite true. And so when I see this coming, I do give people, a heads up that some people are born with this. But here's the other side to this, is that they can have depression. But the other side is they can make the impossible dream happen, depending on which thought patterns they are feeding. And I am a great believer, especially after seeing Oppenheimer, but I'm a great believer that thoughts are energy, and that and they have great power. Great power. You can laugh or you can cry with them. And so it's about an aspect that says this is a lifetime where you can discipline your thoughts and make the impossible dream happen. And that's where I try to help people. And sometimes the illnesses are karmic, they come from ancestral karma. They've inherited certain patterns physically from their ancestors, and that will show up with Plutonian energy or Scorpion energy.
Wow, that's really fascinating. So I can only imagine the people who come to you and how you enlighten them, because most of the people that we find that are coming to us to for help with their physical pain, because in Ayurveda and Chinese medicine, the philosophy is that those conditions are uh, constrictions in the subtle bodies.
Right.
And then finally, when they express in the physical body, they've been brewing for some time. And
Exactly.
so these thoughts and these patterns, for the most part, have been unconscious for
Right.
quite a while. And so, like a recent person who we're involved with a study with has sciatica, and it came on. Nothing happened. There was no accident. There was no, just all of a sudden, this came up. And after a few months of trying this and that and many other therapies, they happened to come to our research lab. And when I looked at her scan, we use some diagnostics based on Ayurveda. And I said, this is kind of an emotional problem. It's a little
Right.
challenging to tell someone who doesn't have any experience with, or this type of background, that, hey, it's all in your head. It really is all in your head. Somehow or another, some thought pattern went wonky and you hung on to that.
Right.
So now it's expressing as sciatica. So, and then on the indices that we use, it comes up, and she was like, oh my gosh, this is so true. So, but in you are using the astrological influences that a person is come with, their blueprint. And
Oh,
you're
right.
able to show them, like, hey, have you ever considered this thought process? Is that true?
It is true. It's like one of the things that I tell people, your unconscious is running the show, even though you believe that you're consciously taking credit for it. It is really the unconscious running the show, and we all have it somewhere. It is the Pisces energy, it is the Neptune energy, and it is in astrology the 12th house. And these are the thoughts we don't share with other people. I read something not too long ago that women think 60 thoughts a day. And my teacher has said, your destiny is a thought you forgot you thought. And it's because we don't pay attention to it. So, one of the things that, especially with partnerships, I get a lot of people that um, want to know, when am I going to meet someone? And I can see when they have a tune up about love and money. In astrology, love and money is ruled by the same energy. Isn't that fascinating? And because so in this, I tell people we are never attracted to our opposite. I know everybody thinks it's the opposite, but it isn't. We're attracted to what we say to ourselves in the recesses of our own mind that we don't share with other people. And so if you're mean to yourself, you're always going to be mean and want a mean person coming into your life. If you're kind to yourself, you'll only be attracted, and you'll only attract to you people who are kind. And so I feel great sympathy and great, really, compassion for the women who are in shelters and the men who have been abused, because I believe that until they stop abusing themselves, they will always be attracted to an abuser. And that's a powerful statement. And so if I can get someone to look and to concentrate and to observe the patterns that are in their mind, it changes everything. Changes everything.
Well, you certainly provide an amazing service to help these people become aware, bring to light their patterns. So now let's move on. Once they've become aware of their pattern, what have you found in your life, or I guess I should say through sound and
Right.
meditation, those types of things, Reiki,
Right.
those are all support tools to help change the pattern.
Exactly.
So
So go ahead. Sorry.
I just was going to say, at some point, they recognize the pattern, but then they have to agree to change it.
Oh, absolutely. I'm not a therapist, so I don't pretend to have techniques that they can do. And nor would I want to be a therapist, to be honest. But I do want people to be aware, and I do want them to know that there are things they can do. Just as an example, meditation. Meditation easily can change the patterns in the brain in a very short period of time. And if it's consistent, it's the consistency. And so the other thing is that there's many ways. This is actually has come up recently. Everybody thinks it's sitting. And for me, sitting for meditation has always been difficult. Um, uh, because I have some, problems that a bit car accidents and things like that. So it's not comfortable all the time for me to sit. Um, but I can do it through sound, which is not a yoga. And that's through chanting. And I can sit at a harmonium for a long time. and and it's a form of meditation, is walking and doing a mantra. Walking in nature is a form of meditation. There is a book, the Vijnana Bhairava, that's 5,000 years old. It's 122 different ways to get in touch with that divinity within us. We know of Hatha yoga, or what everyone refers to as yoga, as one, and meditation as sitting. But my teacher has explained to us that meditation is not a technique; it's a state of being. And so all the techniques are to lead you there. So just as an example, when I have played the harmonium and the tambura for like 43 years. And in India, there is no such thing as on key. They don't have that. They tune the instruments to your voice. And so I started thinking about that, and I thought, isn't that interesting? That because of the tambura, and I thought, oh wow, what if we tuned it to the lowest note you could sing comfortably? It would, and where I got this actually from was Oprah on a show she had, where when we say no, the authentic person of us, our authentic self, when we if we're saying no in a very strong way, we go no, and that's the voice that is our authentic voice, is how we say that no. And I thought, wow, I wonder what would happen if we tuned the tambura to the lowest note you could sing comfortably. And so I started doing that when I would play, but I was dropping the tambura. I would go into such a deep meditation that I was losing control of the tambura. So I thought, this is not good. So I went to a friend of mine who had a recording studio, and I said, look, would you make me a CD for myself so I could, because it would just draw me into meditation. So I thought, okay. And he said, oh yeah. And he said, why don't we do like the whole scale? Like everybody has a low note. And so we did these 7 different keys, and we named them Keys to the Heart Meditation. It's a year and a half to do it. And we played live. We didn't loop anything. And we had different keys for people, because if you resonate, it's like a person, it's like you resonate with certain frequencies, and you resonate with a certain person's energy. And it's the same with sound, is that if you resonate, to a particular sound that is your lowest note, for instance, it will gently pull you into meditation. You don't have to work very hard at it. And so originally I wanted this for people who worked in the offices. My daughter came home and she said, everybody's stressed. And I thought, what can I do to contribute to this? And I thought, I can do these CDs. And that's how it all began. And so we have these CDs out that people can, I thought, well, just eat lunch and put the CD on in the background and it'll calm you down when you go back to the office. um, so that was how that came about.
What a gift. Thank you for that. And we'll include in the notes here how to for everyone to have access to those CDs.
Oh yeah, they're on Amazon, but also, my website carries everything about astrology and everything about Reiki and everything about the keys to the heart meditation. And
well, yeah. Tell us now about the tambura, because Betty is actually a master tambura player and musician and teacher. And
right. So, may I show it to you? May I? Yeah. I have one here. Actually, I have 3 tambours. And this is the one that I keep downstairs. The rest are in my meditation room. But it's made out of a pumpkin. It's a gourd and it's a pumpkin. It's all hollow. And there are 4 strings. Some of them are 5 strings, but this is 4 strings and it's a droning instrument. And so what this does, it's 2 notes. Let me see if this is in tune. Not so great, but it creates a droning sound. And with it, the longer you play it, the more harmonics come into play. And I love this instrument. And then the harmonics create harmonics, and there's no instruments that can produce those sounds. So it becomes this, if it's played correctly, and each tambura is different, it's like a different person, but if it's played correctly, what happens is you'll hear a ping. It's almost like a Tibetan bell at the end of the round, and you'll start hearing that. So they're very delicate. The whole neck, everything is hollow, so the whole thing vibrates when you play it, but it's a wonderful instrument. And we tried to figure out how old it was. And I think the oldest, this is dating back before the Veena and before the sitar, but there is an ancient Persian painting with a tambura in it.
I was going to ask you about the historical track there to see when was it introduced, and
there's no permanent record except that it came before the sitar, it came before the Veena, and it has two notes, and those 2 notes create this incredible harmonics, and you can feel that right in your chest. You can feel it. One time when I was teaching a class at the meditation center that I go to, we had a microphone, and we had someone who was the host, and I was teaching the class, and there were 6 tambura players, and they said, can we play? And I said, they kept wanting to play, and I said, yes, as long as you pay attention to the microphone and to the host. And so they all started playing, and all of a sudden we heard this wong, wong, and we thought it was the volume was turned up too much on the microphone with the host, but it was the tamburas, and it was picking up the sound in the room. It was incredible. And so each note, each of the scales affects a different part of the body as well. As an example, like we did a tambura in E, and that affects the liver area and the pancreas. And because these are the vibrations that are in this particular area, and people talk about chakras. And so they're affiliated with the different chakras as well.
And the tambura in Indian classical music, as they perform it today, and I think the past century, the tambura is the staple, that
It is.
background that all else is sitting upon.
It's the foundation of the chant or the bhajan or the devotional songs. It's the two notes of the person's voice that it's tuned to, and so it carries the underpinning of the chant. It's the foundation. And interestingly, when people are playing with a kirtan, a namasa kirtana, when they're playing with it, they the tambura has its own rhythm. It doesn't follow the rhythm of a drum or anything else. It's almost like it's in its own island, and it follows the rhythm of the tambura itself. And that can depend on the day, the weather, and so it's a very unique instrument. At the meditation center that I go to in Atlanta, we are really fortunate because we have some excellent tambura players, and they play for meditation, and you have to be very steady. You can't twang something during meditation, but these guys are fabulous, really.
So you touched on the therapeutic aspect of the organ system and maybe even the endocrine system as it relates to the chakras.
Right.
And so do you have any evidence of the actual meditation and its effect on the mind, or
I can tell you one guy bought the whole series, and he wrote me a note, and he said there were 7 different CDs at the time that he picked up, and he said every meditation that I do with a different one, I have a different experience of getting to that place to meditate, of meditation. So he would have a different experience depending on which CD he was listening to. It was pretty interesting. For me, I just play around with the ones that I like. So, and sometimes I'll get up. No one could live with me, I'm sure. I get up at 3 a.m. and feel like playing, and I go and play the tambura, and it just, I don't even know what it does. It slows the mind down. In Reiki, just to show you how everything is connected, in Reiki, it was taught to me that if you slow the heart rhythm down through Reiki positions, hand positions, you will slow the mind down. If you slow the breath down, you'll slow the mind down. And so these CDs that I have, it starts off at a pretty fast pace. And that's really when you sit for meditation, and when I sit for meditation, I'm not just instantly in it, So it is a process. So every 10 minutes, I slow the tambura down. And by the end of it, you're just gone, you don't even know you're being drawn in. And there's this quietness, and then the tambura ends. And so so it slows the heart rhythm down. I think you probably know this because of cymetics, but and Steve Halpern, I remember him talking about this, but he said that in about 3 seconds, whatever rhythm is being played, the heart will take on that rhythm. And so when people are in the hospital, they can't have really any music going when the doctors come in to hear the heartbeat, because they're not going to get a true heartbeat. Isn't that correct? I believe that's correct. And so the tambura, as it slows down, it's slowing down everything, because to me, there's this point where it's actually assimilating the breath, and the breath carries everything.
Such a fantastic tool that you've created, Betty. Thank you for doing that. Because in today's world, people can't turn it off. They go to sleep and they don't go to sleep because, the mind keeps going. It's either the laundry list of the to-do of, whether it's in the home or the work life, or the kids, or the, spouse, the parents,
Exactly.
they just can't, they can't turn it off. And when we don't have a good sleep pattern going, that's what then catches up with us rather quickly to affect our immune system, etc. So that's a
Exactly.
wonderful tool. Well, let me
It
ask you
is.
this. Did you have any correlation between the celestial bodies and sound?
There is something with it. Uh, but I haven't really, to be honest, I have not studied it. I know there are CDs out where they have uh, recorded. I don't know how this happens because we're in a vacuum in outer space, but evidently there's sound that can travel in outer space. And I know I was listening to a recording of Saturn, and the sounds of Saturn. But I have not really had the time, honestly, to replicate that. Although I would like to, I think each planet does have a different tones and different sounds and different vibrations, obviously. And but that would be a great study to do.
Right. Yeah, I think that was through our space program, through NASA. They were able to
Right,
capture the sounds. And I don't think that we could actually hear those sounds with the human ear in the
right.
audible until they brought it down into our hearing range. And I think that's sort of how that happened.
And I do believe that just because we can't hear it, it isn't. It was like that day when I was teaching the tambura. We could hear some, but we didn't hear the incredible impact in the room that it had. We weren't able to pick all of that up except through a microphone. So I do think we're influenced all the time, and particularly with our thoughts. I think those are the most they're the closest to us, and they have the most power of influencing how we feel, our state of being, all of it, and the belief. Recently, I'd love to share this. I went to see Oppenheimer, which I was quite impressed with. But about 3 days before, I was reading this ancient book called the Yoga Vashista, and it's the union with the sage Vashista, the eternal sage, and he's explaining to this 16-year-old boy the power of thought. And he says, this is the quote: inherited in thought is consciousness. Therefore, thought has the power to manifest instantly. And I heard that and I was stunned. I thought, instantly. And then I contemplated and I said, why are we not experiencing that? And I thought, because we have the thought it can't happen. And it interferes with the manifestation instantly. And then when I saw Oppenheimer and he was talking about nothing is solid, that they're particles even that are smaller than atoms, they're not even touching one another. I realized that there's these channels. I saw these channels in my mind of where all the energy travels. And that is how we're connected with love. That is how we're all connected, regardless if we're in a physical body. The love always connects us 100% of the times, and those are the channels for thought to travel. That's not the solid part.
Right. Well, in Ayurveda, they talk about the five koshas, the physical body and the four subtle bodies.
Right.
And Ayurveda views disease or disorder as an opportunity to
Right.
reconnect with our spiritual divine. And they in the fourth body, the fourth it was called the Vijnanamaya kosha, next to the Anandamaya kosha, that is where the mistake of the intellect happens. It
Right.
happens where we disconnect from that field of love, which you're describing, and we somehow or another have this thought, as you mentioned, that I can't do it, or I don't deserve to do it, something like that. And then that's where that pattern begins to gain momentum. And so the longer that that pattern gains momentum, we have this disconnect.
It's more difficult to break that pattern. And I do believe that it takes pure love to break that pattern. And it has to be a pure love. It can't have conditions on it. It just, my brother who passed away had, he was a very funny guy, but he was also very, don't give me any credit for anything guy. And he came upon an accident, and there were lots of people standing around, and the car was on fire, and there was someone in the car. And he went up and pulled the guy out, and before the first responders came. And then he got in the car and he left. And to me, that was an act of pure love. Like, he didn't know the person, he wasn't going to receive anything at all from doing such an act, and except that he saved someone's life. And those are the kinds of things. There's no reward. You're not looking for a reward. You're not looking, no one's looking for something to get back. I tell clients all the time that, especially couples, when they come, that you're responsible for your own happiness. And then you come together and you share that. Otherwise, it's grabbing. And so that happiness, in my opinion, can only be found, and through my own experience, through my connection to my higher self, which is the love. And in every tradition, when I had my bookstore, we carried books from every tradition, and every one, the common denominator was God is love. Not like love, but God is love. And when we're feeling that pure love, I think we're aligned with that divinity in us. And it's not looking for any reward.
You've certainly come across and developed some wonderful tools to help people calm down, become still, because when we're running around and not focused on that love, it's very difficult.
Right. It
And,
is.
and I think sound and meditation are two very key tools, because the scriptures, and all scriptures across all world religions, talk about the silence.
Right.
We find the true highest truth and the highest love.
Right. There's no conditions on it. There's this is the one thing I feel is the point of all of it, is to connect people back. It's always there. Sound you can take with you no matter where you are, through your voice, or through even your thoughts, which is even more subtle. And the love is always there. It gets clouded up sometimes. It gets clouds and you can't see it, but it's always there. Even, I do believe, even the act of when people are depressed, I think it's the lowest form of loving, but I do think it's still a love of who they are, or they wouldn't be sad. And it's being able to have the tools to come back to that. It's the joy that children are born with. It's the pure joy, and they don't worry, they just are. And especially babies. That's why I feel like you can hold a baby, and I know you've got a new grandchild, and that baby will put you into a state of meditation just from holding it, because you're connecting with that love and that divinity. And it's to me, that's the beauty of being alive. It's the beauty, and it's the birthright of all of us. Birthright. And so we're always seeking it, no matter what we call it, we're always seeking that love. And out here, this was my experience, that I kept trying to find it through circumstances. And it was only when I realized I have to connect inside and find the way to connect. And that is what will sustain me. I was looking for permanent contentment. And that's the only place I've ever been able to find it, is within myself. And I'm very, very grateful.
How long did it take you to get there, Betty? For our listeners who go, what? It's within me. You know,
I think we get glimpses, we get glimpses. And it's like my teacher has always said, it's not hard to see God. What's hard is maintaining it. And that's the key. And so there's always something that always struck me in Star Wars with Yoda, when he first came on the scene. And Joseph Campbell was he was the great scholar who was the consultant for Star Wars with George Lucas. But there was one when he first comes on the scene, he's got a snake leading him in front of him, and then it turns into a staff. And when he needs it to guide him home, he throws the staff down, it turns into a snake. And when he gets home, it becomes a staff again. And it was when I was reading Joseph Campbell, that was a representation of the mind. The snake is always moving. It's the mind, and the staff is the disciplined mind. And I love that. I love that. So it's not that recently I was with some monks, and my grandson, who is a really intelligent boy, was there. And they asked him, do you meditate? And he goes, oh, no. He said, I like my mind to think. And he said, I enjoy it thinking. And then they said, oh, and we went on to other subjects. And then he interrupted and he said, oh, wait. He said, there is a time where I don't think at all. And he said, he dives and scuba dives. And he said, when I first go in under the water, I have no thoughts. And they said, well, how do you feel? And he said, it's really incredible. He said, I feel like I'm not a person. And they said, that is meditation. It was great.
Oh, that's wonderful. Gosh, well, Betty, thank you so much for sharing with us today. Is there anything that you would like to leave our listeners with? Any words of wisdom that you haven't already spoken?
I think the greatest thing anyone can have is feeling gratitude for who they are, and to realize that there is something greater than themselves that made them. And so they really can't take credit for who they are, but they can be grateful for who they are and their talents, because everybody has them. Everyone. So I invite everyone to explore and to appreciate who they are. They should be dancing and celebrating themselves. Because
Yeah.
if they can make a person, let me know. I'll bow to them.
The attitude of gratitude has been underscored throughout millennia to be a shortcut to healing.
It's a great virtue.
Anyway, thank you. And would you like to tell us your website and how people can find you?
Absolutely.
For their coaching and figuring out their patterns according to the celestial bodies, as well as I don't know. I think you have a lot of wisdom there,
There's
Betty.
a lot of choices out there. There's a lot of avenues. So yes, my website is www.bettymckeon.net. It's very simple, and they can find out. They can sign up for a consultation. They can read about Reiki, and they can also access the keys to the heart meditation, and to click on their particular sound, their lowest note that they can sing comfortably. So, but thank you so much. I just want to say this, because I think what you have offered into this world has been monumental. and really influencing people and giving them the information of how powerful frequencies are. I would like to say this one last thing. In 1985, I was with my teacher in New Orleans, and she made this statement. And she said, not now, but in the future. She said, the doctors are going to find that sound and music will heal people. She said, even chanting. And so we are here, and you are a great leader. And so thank you.
Oh, thank you, Betty. Thank you so much for all the gifts you provide as well. Really appreciate you. Love and
Thank you.
grateful for you.
Okay. It's good to see you,
Good to see
Nara.
you too. Until next
Okay.
time. I think
Yes.
I'm gonna have to do this again.
Okay. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.